And what if Spartacus, the same rebellious gladiator, had not only led a slave uprising but also defeated Rome? Just imagine, 71 BC, instead of Spartacus crucified on the Appian Way, a triumphant march of former slaves dictating their terms to Rome itself. It sounds like a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster, but let's be serious. What if Spartacus and his army of slaves had defeated the Roman legions? Would Rome have become a republic of free people? Or would Spartacus have simply replaced one tyrant with another, joking, "Well, Crassus, now you owe me a pair of sandals"? The Third Slave War, or Spartacus revolt, is not just a story about a gladiator who became a symbol of the struggle for freedom. This is the moment when Rome, a powerful empire, shuddered in fear because 120,000 slaves armed with anything challenged its power. In real history, Spartacus lost. Marcus Licinius Crassus defeated his army, and Pompey helped to finish off the survivors in order to boast of victory. But what if Spartacus had been not only brave, but also cunning? What if his army had not fallen apart due to internal strife, and the Roman legions had not had time to unite? This topic is interesting because it makes us think. How could one victory have changed the fate of Rome and the whole world? Would slaves have become free citizens? Or would Spartacus have founded his own empire, where gladiatorial battles would have replaced elections? How would this have affected culture and politics? And would we celebrate Spartacus Day today instead of Christmas? What follows is a story that is hard to put down, with unexpected twists and turns, ironic moments, and questions that will make you think. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, or maybe some wine, like the Romans, and let's imagine Spartacus rewriting history. Let's go back to 73 BC. Spartacus, a former gladiator from Thrace, escapes from the gladiatorial school in Capua with 70 comrades. In real history, his rebellion lasts 2 years, but ends tragically. The Roman legions, led by Crassus, defeat the slave army in 71 BC. But in our alternate reality, everything goes differently. Spartacus turns out to be not only a charismatic leader, but also a brilliant strategist. He avoids making fatal mistakes, unites his men, and wins a decisive victory. The first key point: Spartacus does not march north to the Alps as he had planned to get the slaves out of Italy. Instead, he decides to take a chance and attacks Rome. In 72 BC, his army, already numbering 120,000 men and women, defeats the Roman forces in several battles. Spartacus uses guerrilla tactics. His men know the terrain, set up ambushes, and cut the Roman legions into small pieces. Imagine the Roman senators who, upon hearing of Spartacus's approach, panic and shout, "Take my togas, I'm going to Sicily." The second point: Spartacus captures Rome. In 71 BC, his army enters the city. Crassus, who defeated Spartacus in real history, is defeated this time due to a lack of coordination with Pompey. Spartacus avoids the trap that Crassus was preparing in the south and bypasses his troops through Etruria. The Romans, not ready for such a turn, surrender. Spartacus proclaims the abolition of slavery and creates a new council where former slaves and poor Roman citizens get a voice. The Senate is outraged, of course, but what can they do? One of the senators must be muttering, "I told you gladiatorial fighting was a bad idea." Third point: the Roman Republic is transformed. Spartacus doesn't become a new king or dictator. He knows that would only replace one tyranny with another. Instead, he creates a system where power is distributed among representatives of different groups: former slaves, peasants, and artisans. Slavery is officially banned, and land is redistributed among the poor. Imagine the Roman patricians who are now forced to work on their villas themselves, muttering, "It's all Spartacus' fault. Slaves used to do everything." Now let's see how this affects the world. First, the Roman Republic becomes more egalitarian. Without slave labor, the economy changes. The Romans begin to develop technologies to replace manual labor. Perhaps they would have invented steam engines a few centuries earlier because there is no free labor now. Imagine Roman aqueducts powered by steam and senators bragging, "My aqueduct is faster than yours." Second, Rome's expansion is slowing down. Without slaves working in the conquered territories, Rome cannot afford endless wars. Gaul, Britain, and Egypt remain independent for longer, developing their own cultures. For example, the Gauls could create their own state, and the Celts in Britain could preserve their traditions. Imagine the Druids writing their Celtic constitution, while the Romans were busy with Spartacus' reforms. Third, religion and culture change. Without imperial expansion, Christianity, which in real history became the official religion of Rome, spreads more slowly. Local religions, such as the cults of Mithras or Isis, remain popular. Perhaps we would celebrate the day of Mithras instead of Christmas, with traditional dances around the sacred fire. In Roman culture, without gladiatorial fighting, which Spartacus banned, the Romans could have focused more on theater or science. Imagine Roman theaters staging plays about the heroic Spartacus and children in schools writing essays on how Spartacus saved Rome. How does this affect the present? Without the Roman imperial model, the world looks different. Europe is not united under the rule of Rome, but remains a mosaic of states with their own cultures. Without a centralized empire, feudalism might not have become the dominant system, and the Middle Ages look more democratic. Technological progress, which began earlier thanks to Roman inventions, changes the course of history. We might have had steamships in the 10th century, and the first computers made in Gaul in the 15th. Political ideas are also different. The Spartacus model of equality inspires subsequent generations. Revolutions like the French Revolution occur earlier, and democracy becomes the norm in the early Middle Ages. Imagine a world where there are no kings, and all decisions are made at popular assemblies, like in Spartacus's Rome. And of course, the culture. Instead of Roman columns, every city has a variety of architectural styles, from Celtic to Egyptian. And the food? Without Roman traditions, we would probably eat more Gallic dishes. Imagine baguettes 1500 years earlier. So, what do we have in a world where Spartacus has won? The Roman Republic becomes an egalitarian state where there are no slaves and power belongs to the people. Europe is a mosaic of cultures where Gaul, Britain, and Egypt develop their own traditions, not conquered by Rome. Technology flourishes earlier, and we might have been traveling on steamships in the Middle Ages. Christianity does not become the dominant religion, and we celebrate the day of Mithras instead of Christmas. And democracy? Thanks to Spartacus, it appears a century earlier, and the world looks like a big council where everyone has a voice. Imagine, instead of the Colosseum, there are theaters where plays about Spartacus are staged, and children in schools argue whether he was better than Caesar. This story makes you wonder, how could one man change the fate of an empire? In reality, Spartacus lost, and Rome continued on its way to becoming the empire that shaped our world. But what if Crassus hadn't had time to gather his troops, and Spartacus had united his men? Would we have lived in a more just world, or would we have simply replaced some tyrants with others? The irony is that the Romans were so afraid of Spartacus, but then they destroyed their republic themselves. Maybe Spartacus would have done a better job. As the Roman peasants would have joked, better Spartacus with a sword than the Senate with togas. This story reminds us that history is a shaky tower where one good move can change everything. Maybe we should thank Spartacus for at least trying. If you enjoyed imagining this world without slaves, please like the story. It's like saying thank you to Spartacus for his courage. Subscribe so you don't miss new stories about how history could have turned. Write in the comments what you would add to Spartacus's Rome. Maybe gladiatorial fights, but with the election of the winner? Let's figure out together how history would have turned out. See you in the next story.